It's funny because even in this day and age, where we have more options than ever to meeting people and meeting people of the opposite gender or the same gender, um, people are still having a hard time, even a very difficult time, and maybe even a worse time than they did 100, 200, 500 years ago. Even with the advent of online dating, websites, and apps on your phone, and everything else, things have still been worse for some people, a few people, not all people. Um, and there's a lot of reasons for this. There's hundreds of factors at play, if not thousands. Um, and therefore, there's a whole variety of different people out there. There are people who are doing very, very well, and getting laid is like a snap with their fingers. Others, it's the hardest thing ever, and they can't accomplish it at all. There was a statistic done on the depression level of Amish people. Amish people are people who live on farms, and they pretty much only do things that happened 100 years ago. So if the technology didn't occur for 100 years ago, they wouldn't use it. It's a very simplified description of an Amish person. But it was found that the depression level in an Amish person was like a fourth or a very small fraction of the depression of modern people. And Amish people are still, doing their thing now. They choose not to use technology. And I guess that illustrates something. I think one of the things is that I've talked about this numerous times, but the evolutionary rate that we evolve and change based on our environment is very, very slow compared to the rate of environmental change that we have brought about ourselves with cities and skyscrapers and so forth that we constructed to help our lives. And there's a lot of biological reasons for this, and it's also sort of caused by the unprecedented rapid change of our environment. Um, but generally, it means that a lot of people are still geared towards how they lived 10,000 years ago or longer, which means in groups of less than 100 and in small towns, and you're geared to live to 20 years old, and the most people you'll meet in your lifetime are those handful of people in your town. And obviously, now that everyone's moving to bigger cities and so forth, and with social media, you have a connection with so many people and their fleeting connections, and all these things come together. So, enough with the long intro. The point of this is that a lot of things don't work out for a lot of people, and I do think that for females and males alike, they're still, partially because of this, still trying to flounder and figure things out. For whatever reason, online dating is not working for them. Maybe it's just too sketchy for them. It's too surreal. Maybe they're not getting results from it. Maybe there's too much competition, especially for guys. I definitely think that's true. From my experience, the guy girl ratio on a lot of those websites are way in favor of the girls. So oftentimes the girls are bombarded with messages, the guys are not getting enough. And also, there's still competition with girls. So not every girl is getting those messages. So there's a lot of other factors at play, thousands. Maybe you work very hard, 6 to 7 hours per day. And therefore, you get cases where there's very attractive females who don't know what to do, and they are literally just, hoping one day, guys too, in a state where they're just walk, they dream of just meeting that girl or guy one day at some random location, whether it's at a grocery store or a coffee shop. And in reality, though, from my experiences, the biggest point of meeting people is through a large social network. Statistically, it is the highest place that people find their spouses, or they just find other people that they want to date or hook up with or whatever. is just very high statistically. I saw a study earlier, and it was like a huge percentage, and obviously that percentage is going down slowly over every year due to the new entrants like online dating and so forth. But still, still a huge segment, and it will continue being one. And it's still a huge player at like 70-80% even now. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and ask anyone you see on the street, your family, friends, how they met their girlfriend, how they met their boyfriend, how they met their wife. Oftentimes, it's through some social gathering through friends. And that's how it goes. And so, as far as the whole approaching people in the day thing, I definitely encourage that because a lot of people are going through life. The great majority of them are not like me or the others out there who are trying to make a difference themselves. They're going about life hoping one day something will happen. Um, they're females hoping that they'll be approached. They go to a bar and they sit there and they wait. And if the guy's too shy, well, too bad. It's not the traditional thing to do. And then they go home thinking, oh, what should I do now? And there are other situations where um, they just hope that they'll bump into one day and they'll be approached. And I think guys are getting better at approaching in the day for sure. And for some girls, it can be a hindrance. The very attractive ones are probably, there's a new revolution coming about with, you know, people trying to pick up girls in the day and so forth. But I think generally, when you look at the general population, when I first got into this and I saw all those YouTube videos, I thought, and in some parts it is true, um, I thought that this everyone was doing it and it was just overdone and it was overdone and everyone would just be annoyed if you were approached anywhere anymore because of all these videos and people doing it. But when you look at the general population, um, if you go to China or even a big city, um, some areas there are plenty of females who are just like that's still very out of the ordinary for that to happen. So there's numerous ways to increase your chances. One of those being approaching in those sort of environments, um, but also there's the nightlife, of course, and as far as America goes, it's somewhat become like a custom to go out and party and club and go to a bar or a nightclub and those sort of things to meet people. But um, I feel like there's definitely a large section of the population who looks at it as sort of grimy, somewhat low class. Um, you're not going to find a quality person there in terms of accomplishments in life and so forth. And so generally, it's like it somewhat is true, and therefore, although it's a standard, this partying, college party and so forth, it's also like, well, I don't know, what about all those other people who don't go to those sort of venues? So, um, ultimately, though, it comes back down to social circle, which is very hard for a lot of other people to do, which, you know, brings people to this point where they're not very good at making friends or expanding their social circle. And it's one of those areas where you can write books on it. And first off, there's not a lot of books on it. And even if you do, it's such a intangible thing at times that books aren't going to help as much. Even seminars or videos and stuff like that can only do so much because it's such an intangible thing, but it can help. So obviously, expanding your social circle is something. Uh, Dabbling in those things, online dating, approaching in the daytime or nighttime, going to nighttime venues, um, all those things may help. You may think that it won't work for you, and then if you try them out, perhaps it will work for you. But generally, what I've found is that the majority of people go through life, as in many things, just letting the wind blow them wherever they want to go. Everything that they're doing is has been pushed upon them and established by their parents, by culture, tradition, and they just go through life like I've done for most of my life, before I started just become more self-aware because of events in my life that just pushed me out of it. And obviously, I'm still on that journey trying to figure it out and achieve my goals. Um, but it's sort of this thing of they're just going through life. Oh, I'm just going through life. One day, hopefully, I will bump into a great girl, or oh, I want to go to this party. Maybe I'll meet a great girl, and they're just floating through life. Oh, I think I want to do this job, just fleeting and not really sure about things. Um, but I think once once you get that sort of self awareness of hey, I want to take control of my life. I want to get results. I think it's a step in the right direction. It won't change everything immediately, but it can help. Rather than just going through life hoping one day you'll bump into a female or so forth. Why don't you can take control of stuff, and not it's not just dating or females. It's other stuff like business, your passion in life, achieving your goals. And that's a hard thing to accomplish at times and achieve and even swallow. For me, for instance, I very much I want to get create these very cinematic, ridiculous movie scenes, or just like dance music video things with I have all these like all the scenes and everything sort of mapped out at times. Um, but again, you kind of just have to stop saying, "Oh, I'm just going to go through life and wherever the wind blows." Uh, they oftentimes just a lot of people do that. Instead, why don't you just like take control of it and sort of figure it out? And I do think that even now it is a very tough time because when at least in the olden days, I guess you could say, your options were limited, and therefore it made things very simple and clear what you had to do. Um, but that it's not an excuse to use. It's not like oh things were better then. Take control of your life and figure out what can you do. Try these options, and obviously apply this model to other areas of your life you think you can fix. And more so than that, figure out what can you do if these aren't working out. What can you improve? Your fashion, your sense, so forth. Maybe even look at your occupation. Try moving towards an occupation that can help you with this. Building a social circle, meeting the right people, going to the right venues, on and on and on. And ultimately, like those, I do think that uh, a revolutionary change in society could benefit us all. Um, Generally, though, I guess like outside of the options I've mentioned, it's like nightlife, online dating, so forth, all those things. There needs to be something else out there. The like traditionally established norms of meeting people outside of these places, somewhat grimy places, is not normal yet. Um, and unless you spit really good game, it's not normal. Like females will say, "Oh, I'd love to meet a girl, I mean a guy, uh, at the gym or at the coffee shop or the supermarket, and so forth." It is outside of the norm for them when you actually approach and do it, um, and it can be accomplished and so forth. But their comfortability with that and just accepting it and going with it, it's much it's much different, and some of it is for logical reasons. Like you don't know who this person is. He's a stranger. He may look nice, but he could be potentially a rapist, or a kidnapper, or a mugger, or a psychotic person. On the flip side, though, if you're meeting someone through mutual friends and you trust your mutual friend, then that sort of thing places a deeper, intangible level of faith in these people, which is why I think most people meet through mutual friends, through social circle interactions. Um, so who knows what may happen in the future? Maybe someone's going to invent something that might just bring it all together, something more person to person rather than something digital. perhaps some sort of daytime venue or classier venue. Not like a lounge, night lounge classy, but like, you know, daytime classy for people who don't like those sort. Not necessarily classy either, just something for meeting people, and not as cheesy as speed dating. Um, but generally, for most people, I do think outside these things, uh, you just gotta keep exploring options. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know any suggestions for you. And obviously, there's I think I recently wrote an article on my blog about a pool bar and beaches are obviously another thing. But again, obviously, all these venues nowadays are sort of it can be kind of weird if you just go to them strictly to meet women. So again, the standard, the norm is somewhat different. So that's all we want to say, and I want to know your opinions. Do you think you think today has not as many options or not as many viable options for certain people who don't fall into these categories? What are your suggestions? What do you think that can be done? Do you really think it's a problem? Am I missing something that was not mentioned uh, in terms of meeting people? Maybe clubs or meetups. Um, there's a website called meetup.com where any sort of hobby from hiking to running to wine tasting groups can be formed, and they meet up weekly or daily or monthly, and they make friends and they enjoy their hobby. Obviously, that's a huge suggestion um, that I've come across a lot of times. But from what I found, those sort of things, even if it's a large group gathering, oftentimes um, it can work. But generally, if you want to do it that way, you want to use it more so to establish a social circle and friendships and connections rather than to meet people, because most of the time the chances are you won't find anyone that you're really attracted to in those groups, because sometimes they're small, sometimes the niche or interest groups may be big, but the demographic is just not someone you're attracted to physically. It can happen quite a lot, and uh, it just happens, especially if you're a nerd or gamer. You can go to these sort of meetings, and there could be 100 people there. 99% of them are guys, and that one girl already has a boyfriend, and so you're kind of fighting uphill. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Thanks for watching.